that she has to attend to, so no one else was able to speak, but they were coming to speak in favour of the Aquatics Network business case. And now, do want to acknowledge, and I think there's a group of graduates, planning grads, coming to watch some of our meetings, so kia ora, and please say hello to your other colleagues as well. Hope we make however long you're here interesting, but feel free, there's a live stream, you can watch it like all night tonight if you want as well. But welcome and thank you for being here. We're straight on to 8.1, the Aquatics Network Program Business Case. We have Emily, Carol, and Louise coming up, I think. If you just want to introduce yourselves, and I know there's a presentation, we've had lots and lots of discussions on this item, but we'll maybe just go through the whole presentation and leave questions to the end. But kia ora. Thanks, Louise.
Kia ora, Chair. We're just introducing this topic. I'm Louise Mason, General Manager for Policy. We have Carol Candler, our Senior Manager Community Investment Policy, who's leading this work, and Emily McLean, also from our team. We also have colleagues from both finance and also from Pools and Leisure behind us if they do need to help us with any of the questions. This report today follows on from resolutions that were made earlier by the Planning and Policy Committee to develop a business case around looking at the 30-year view or the future of aquatics in Auckland and to meet the growing needs over that period. It's very much a long-term view. We did do a progress report in 2025, and today we're bringing together some options for you to consider so that we can progress further work on affordability and funding tools to inform the long-term plan process. Our team here will go through those options for you. The decision today is to narrow down those options so that we can do further work, not to actually make decisions on specific pools or specific measures at this point. Obviously, in terms of looking at what service level is provided in future, that will be done through the LTP process and consultation as well. You'll see from this slide, we have previously presented the case for change, and that was reported to committee in February 2025, then giving us the direction to actually look at what we're presenting today, which is the Aquatic Network Program business case, and that is, as I said, giving a number of options and looking at narrowing those so that we can do further work looking at affordability. I'm now going to hand to Carol, who will take us through the options and the analysis that supports that. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Louise. Good morning, everybody. So at the core of the issue, the problem we're trying to solve is to provide more water capacity across the network to better serve Aucklanders. The work that we have done, and which is correlated by the work that Sports New Zealand has done in the New Zealand aquatic facility strategy, show that there are currently severe gaps in Auckland, and that translates in some communities being far away from any aquatic centre. So far away, we're looking at over 10 kilometres distance in urban areas. Some communities also facing overcrowded facilities with long queues and competing needs for water space. As Auckland grows, those gaps will increase in numbers, and the gaps are all over the network. We know we're expecting 600,000 new people over the next 30 years. That's why we're taking this long-term view of how the network could evolve. Importantly, demand is driven by lane and leisure swimming, and there's very little need for competition-type facilities. And so that's also what Sports New Zealand has found. And we also note, and that will be provided as part of the LTP package, that we have challenge in operating an aging network currently. So the renewal question will be presented to you in the next phase of work. So why are we taking a 30-year long-term network view? You'll be all aware that we have some facilities in the pipeline, and over the last 10, 15 years, we've had a lot of stop and go in the planning process, and that type of planning is expensive, but it's also disenfranchising for our communities who have high expectations, notably in the Faux and Flatbush. They've been waiting a long time and still waiting. So taking a long-term view just helps us to prioritize, look at different type of response, not just new build, but, and I'll go through the type of responses we're looking into. And that helps us prioritize and sequence the investment over a long term. Importantly, it also helps us put some of the costs back onto development and limit the impact on rates. So obviously, the level of services are more expensive than we normally or currently have budgeted for. But by taking a 30-year view, you're spreading the cost between the two key funding sources that this council has, which is rates and development contribution. So in looking at our responses, we have in front of you 4 different levels of service and 4 different levels of investment. We have taken a value for money approach, which is in line with the value projects principle. So means looking, really understanding the needs. So we've done very detailed modeling. We have a good understanding as to what's driving those needs, whether it's learn to swim, leisure, or lane water. We have 11 catchments across the region, and we have taken into account both the full provision, public and private provision, and looking at demand and participation rates across different age groups. We're looking at population growth as per the AGSV1. And so we have this helicopter view of where the gaps will be. And as I said, those gaps are very similar to what Sports New Zealand have found. So clear understanding of the gaps and clear understanding of where the priorities are. So we're taking an equity view by prioritizing investment where it's most needed, where the gaps are most acute. We're also testing value through a cost-benefit analysis, and in subsequent planning phases, when we do single business cases for those interventions, those value will be further tested. The right-size investments we looked at in the past, when we looked at intervention, we really favored new build. This program business case takes a right-size approach. So what the size of the gap and how we can fill them. If we fill them through improving the council facilities, it's better value for money. Using our education pools, better value for money. And so new build are effectively a last resort. We're also in the process of doing some work to standardize design, and we would also propose to bundle procurement to drive a better price for council. So that's said, these are the 4 options that we have developed. I'll take a few minutes to explain what they are. So option 1 is the lower cost option, and option 4 is the highest level of service. They all build on one another, means that option 2 is additional intervention from option 1, etc., etc. So option 1 is delivering the 4 pools that are in our planning pipeline. So the 4 Flatbush, Northwest, and Drury pools, all of which are in the development contribution policy. So those go some ways in meeting the needs where we've got identified gaps, but they don't respond to the long-term needs across Auckland. The second option goes further by looking at, across the 11 catchments that we have defined, looking at gaps with over 1.5 facility. This option is very much is about doing the most of what we have already. So we're proposing, in addition to those 4 new builds, some access grants, so partnership with education, 8 of them, some harbour pools, which I understand now there's money in the annual plan for, and also 3 new pool improvements, so council pool improvement, whether all weathering or expansion. So that's option 2. It does some ways in reducing deficits, but option 3 takes a wider coverage across the region, and it targets areas where there's deficit of 1 or more facilities. So in addition to all the options, all the interventions, in option 2, we have an extra new build up north. We have an additional access grant, an additional partnership pool, and 8 more pool improvements, so council pool improvements. And so this option goes quite some ways into improving capacity, water capacity across Auckland. Option 4, which we are not recommending, is the full deficit elimination, so basically meeting all demand. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of new builds proposed, so we're moving from 5 new builds to 11. And also an additional council pool improvement. So this is quite a significant capital investment option. So just give you a minute to look at those 2 options, which are the 2 options we are recommending after doing a cost-benefit analysis and multi-criteria assessments. So you can see that, first of all, some of the interventions are spread across 3 decades, especially in the option 3. And you can see also the type, the actual facilities that we have selected for intervention. The phasing of those interventions can be looked after depending on the decision today, because obviously if we spread some of those interventions more over several years, then the cost in the LTP would be lower. So that the type of things we could look into following today's decision. All right, so that's my last slide. The next step, obviously today we are asking you to narrow the number of options and support option 2 and 3 for us to go away and do more work. The type of work we are wanting to do is first look at what commercial model would be could be used to deliver the new build. So, for example, a lease model. We're doing a request for expression of interest at the moment. So, if we were having a third party building a facility and us leasing it back, what would that look like for affordability? The second piece of work would be around sequencing of those interventions, moving things from decade 1 to decade 3. What difference would that make? We would also work with finance on understanding the impact on interest and effectively on rates. And we would come back as part of the LTP process to provide that advice. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much. I know this is a huge body of work, but of course, everyone needs to remember this is the strategy that informs work to individualize projects, to get investment cases, to look at the trade-offs. This is setting up the work to make sure we've got robust information to move into this LTP, but also future ones. So thank you. I'm going to move, and I think Councillor Ferry's happy to second. There were just a slight change. We just removed the words option 1 because that's already locked in. So it'll just say deliverability of options 2 and 3. Obviously option 1 is within both of those. And then just a slight addition Councillor Ferry added, which is just new aquatic builds and improvements to existing facilities, because that's essentially what is being investigated. So we're just making sure that we're being inclusive of the full work, because there's not a lot of actual new builds in any of the options over and above what's included. But okay, are there any questions? Councillor Patterson-Hamlin, kia ora.
Kia ora. Atamari, pomata. I have a couple of questions on the gap analysis. So the first question is, sorry, I did write these things down. Oh yes, in terms of figuring out the demand, does your analysis take into account the prevalence of backyard pools in terms of predicting where demand may or may not be or grow?
No, it doesn't. So we looked at council provision and non-council provision of a certain size. We haven't taken into account proximity to a beach or prevalence of private pool. But yes, I know we have discussed that.
Yeah, so that was my second question. So this analysis also, the gap analysis also doesn't take into account proximity or accessibility of swimmable rivers or beaches. So it's fair to say that the gaps in some areas might actually be even more stark than what's represented by this analysis if they are in areas of of higher socioeconomic deprivation and further away from swimmable beaches or rivers.
So the question of whether a beach is a substitute for a pool or a pool is a substitute for the beach is quite topical. Obviously, beach swimming is not all year long, and there's also a safety element. You can't learn to swim at the beach, so they have slightly different uses. But there's also, of course, an equity issue about accessibility to beaches. Similarly, you probably can't do too much lane swimming in a private pool because they're quite short, so they have slightly different function.
But it's fair to say that access to those two things will drive or reduce demand for public pool provision.
Well, we haven't got the evidence for that. But what we've looked at is how people use the council and non-council main pool provision across Auckland.
And it's probably also fair to say that the demand that we're registering in terms of how many people are visiting Westwave, say, is not including the many, many, many whānau who do not even attempt to go to Westwave, for example, because of how oversubscribed it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we have looked at participation rate across the region, and we know that Northwest and West have got lower participation rate, and we know that's driven by distance to an aquatic facility or queues, so barriers to access, basically. So that's there's a direct impact on those communities because of lack of provision.
And there'll be, as well, a disproportionate impact on families who face other barriers, such as maybe they don't have a family car. In my case, my family having many neurodivergent people in it, that essentially renders Westwave and the Mount Albert Grammar School pools completely inaccessible to us. Myself and my child would not be able to cope with that environment because of how oversubscribed they are, even though we both love the water. And we can drive. It's a 20-minute-ish drive to one and a 30-minute-ish drive to the other. We're very fortunate we have a car. But the oversubscription, because of other accessibility barriers that we face, has cut off that as an option. So that will be affecting demand to some of those more vulnerable communities as well, won't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks, that's all for now.
Thank you, Councillor. Kia ora, Member Wilson.
Morena, quite a comprehensive in terms of statistics that I'm still getting my head around. My partai is not dissimilar in terms of what the previous speaker has said. What I do note in the report is that there was commentary around equity. And I guess given what we're looking at here, what work do you anticipate will go into furthering this if this is passed around the overlap of areas of higher Māori population or deprivation, because the equity claim hasn't been assessed yet in terms of the report. So what work would go into the notion of equity by way of not geography, but have you determined the higher levels of deprivation specifically for Māori?
Thanks for the question. So equity is a concept that pertains to every stage of planning and delivery of our work. So when we did the network review, we looked at accessibility for community of greatest needs. We found there was no correlation between high deprivation and lack of access. So some communities that might have high deprivation are well served, while others are not. So there's no real link. So that's why we're focusing at this stage of work, we're focusing on the highest gaps in provision. When we do more work at the next stage of development, then that's where we engage with our communities, including Mana Whenua, and we really try to understand the type of services that they wish to access in facilities and reflect the design around those needs. And then the service is also an equity issue. You will know that in the Southern Board, for example, there's free swimming through a targeted rate. So that's a way of addressing a cost barrier for some communities. So equity doesn't stop here. There's a lot of work being done on that.
Yeah, and the report was very good that it covered those aspects that you're talking about, but it did uncover that unusually, I guess, they have equal participation rates as Māori, highly unusual, but they have high access rates that they can't do that and use the pools for, I read all about that, that was great. So I guess I'm trying to translate that into, if you understand that clearly it's well used, but there are access barriers, which means that it could increase. What work will be done around that rather than looking at the business case in its own? The equity, as we all know, does cover a lot, but what is it that you'll be doing to utilise the facts that you have in your report to ensure that you're going to get the results to increase the participation, but understanding that how they use it is different? How will that configure into this program?
Is that something that my colleagues from Operation wants to comment on?
Just while we have our operational colleagues coming up, I think the point is a very pertinent one, and how we continue to look at that. As Carola said, in the next stage, as if this does proceed into the further work for the LTP, and we do look at consulting with Mana Whenua and other groups, that will also provide information for us to look at those equity aspects. We certainly do look at equity throughout this work. There are some challenges in terms of how we find the evidence and the facts and figures to support that, but through that process we're really aware this is something that we need to continue to look at.
Kia ora, and thank you. Ko Garth Dawson, Toku Ingoa. I'm the Head of Service Partner Delivery for Pools and Leisure. Our response to equity leads our direction in service delivery. So as part of my contribution to the future development of this policy is to look at how, on an operational level, we can respond to the equity challenges across the region by engaging with tangata whenua, mana whenua, and about what are the barriers and how we can resolve to improve access and participation in Māori and other communities of greatest need. It is a broad kind of all of council solution that we need to find. It's not just what are the services we offer in the leisure centres. As you've noted, it's transport options to get there. It's making sure that the services we offer are culturally appropriate and that we respect the different ways that services are used and loved by all of Aucklanders. And our direction around equity is that what is good for our Māori audience is good for everybody. So that's sort of our commitment to how we'll develop this in the future.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Kia ora. Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There shouldn't be a surprise question here because I gave a heads up yesterday, but I know we didn't want to speak about specific pools, but it's quite conspicuous by its absence is any mention of the Warkworth area and the growth that's happening in the north. And I can't see it. I've got no idea, neither has the local board, about time frames around when it might actually feature at some stage. So, Warkworth's sitting is a growth satellite. The housing's happening now. The earthworks are continuing, even though there might not be the market demand. So we know it's coming in that area. So the community really wants to know, when might it come up on the radar? And probably, if it's helpful for the officers, the main driver is there's lots of beaches up around Warkworth, but it's not appropriate for swim coaches to be able to teach children how to swim safely at a beach. They need somewhere that's safe to be able to teach them to learn to swim. There are other needs, perhaps around disabilities and exercise for the elderly, but the main driver, my feedback is that it's around learning to swim, so they can go and swim at the beach or in the river and not drown. The closest pool at the moment, parents need to drive down to Silverdale, which is a private pool at Northern Arena, or there's a leisure centre, a council leisure centre at Stanmore Bay, which is again one-way, is a 35-minute drive one way, and then they have to have their lessons, then drive all the way home. So it seems a little bit unreasonable. So I've got two questions. The first one would be, when might we see that potentially come up in the scope of a pool for Warkworth? Because it's missing from this review's findings.
Yes, thank you for the question through the chair. So if you look at the options under option 4, which is our comprehensive response to all gaps, there is a pool plan for Warkworth. Because although it's fast growing, it will remain a small satellite town in the grand scheme of Auckland growth. The demand driven by population growth is not as acute as other areas, so it's not prioritized in option 2, in option 3. So if you look at access for the Warkworth residents in option 3, there's a new pool proposed around Mildays, Wainui, which is about 25 minutes drive from the Warkworth area. I think for smaller rural settlement, as well as Waiheke, I think the best option would be either a partnership with education, or you mentioned through your advisor that there was a proposal from Northern Arena. So I think those two potential way forward would be the best options.
Okay, so probably just seek some advice. So should I be supporting option 4, right? So, which I don't believe the recommendation is reflecting. That's what it sounds like. Would that be a correct interpretation?
Option 4 is the one option which delivers across the whole of the region, and so leaves no gaps unfilled. And so that's where our worker sits.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Chair, a second question would be around, again, I think I've given a heads up yesterday that I'll be asking this question, and that's to do with the Northern Arena, possible public-private partnership or some model like that. In Warkworth, there's a showground that's been built up there. Millions and millions of dollars of ratepayers' money's gone into providing sports grounds. Beside there, there's land available for actually, a swimming facility, aquatic facility. And the firm that operates the private pool out of Silverdale has gone and looked at that site and was prepared to build there in 2021. And on June the 11th, 2025, the Rodney Local Board was advised through a workshop that that was on indefinite hold, and to the best of those elected members and my understanding, the reason for that was around connection costs being requested from Watercare to connect water to that site, which it was mentioned it was $1 million. Now, whether that can be confirmed or not, I'm not sure, but the business case then didn't stack up for this firm that wanted to come and build one in a private capacity. So how do I get some momentum? Who can bring Northern Arena and Watercare together so I can get a decent debrief that I can share with the Rodney Local Board members about why that really hasn't happened? We don't actually know for sure why that has stalled, but it's a perfect example where cooperation between a council group, a CCO and a private enterprise could well get this across the line and provide a need up there and without the cost to the Auckland Council. So how is there somebody that could facilitate that, Chair, and get back to me?
Yeah, it's definitely could be looked at through the strategy process, but I think Miriana will, if you could send me just a, couple of lines, and Miriana will follow it up with Priyan from Watercare, someone in Pools and Leisure, and we can bring those people together just to check on the details, but also what's possible if there's actually a process, like what could unlock that, whether it's the future funding through our other grant funds or something. But Garth, did you have something to?
Thank you, Chair. I was aware of the Northern Arena project back in 2021. I didn't know why it had stalled, but yeah, happy to pick that up and see what we can do to move it forward. That would certainly help. As Carol said, sort of the partnership opportunities is definitely something that we're looking at for the sort of the Warkworth and Wellsford area. So something like that would be great, and it's something that we can probably explore through the Delivering Differently funding as well to see if we can sort of contribute to solving that issue.
Just to add that Watercare has confirmed they have not received a proposal from a private commercial pool in the area and provided a name for a contact, and would be happy to support the process.
Oh, very good. I think this is probably more a fact-finding exercise and breaking some myths, because I just need the factual information. So I really appreciate the support that the council staff can provide, Chair. And I will certainly be sending that memo, and probably the sooner the better that we can get onto this and get something sorted for that Warkworth community. Are you taking comments yet, Chair?
No, we'll wait to the debate if that's all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll just try and stick to questions and then we'll move to debate fairly quick, but the questions are lining up. Councillor Gillen.
Oh, thank you. My first question, I wanted to build on what Councillor Sayers has been talking about. So option 4 delivers some various facilities in the north. So my question is, what happens to those proposed new builds and expansions if option 4 is not endorsed here? Do they just get removed, or are they pushed out another decade? What happens there? So so option 4 includes 1, 2, 3, 4 new builds, 5 new builds and 2 expansions, including Takapuna in my area. So I'm just wondering what happens if option 2 and 3 are endorsed. What happens to those projects that are currently listed in option 4?
They do not proceed. They can be revisited at a later stage, but that's the prioritization is that prioritize areas of greatest needs and intervention that are better value for money. So less new build and more council improvement under option 3 and 2.
Okay, so that would include the one that's listed as Wellsford catchment, which is what Councillor Sayers was referring to. Okay. The Northwest Aquatic Centre is proposed to be built under option 1, and then it's proposed to be expanded in option 4 in the same year. So what's the deal there? Are there 2 different proposals for what's going to be built there, and we'll only get what's actually required if we endorse option 4?
So the Northwest Aquatics has been in the planning for some years. Obviously, it's a fast growing community. It's going to serve well over 100,000 people. So if we were to have a more comprehensive response, we could have a much larger facility in the Northwest under option 4. So under option 1, it would be built as a standard facility, which that's the size of Albany, but with a proper lane pool. And under option 4, it would be much larger.
But what is actually required for the projected population increase in that area? I mean, are we going to be revisiting the expansion of it anyway because it's just going to be overwhelmed?
Well, that's the whole premise of the business case is about balancing, meeting all needs and cost and affordability. So there is an option, which is option 4, where there's no gap left unfilled. This option is not a realistic option for 2 reasons, because first of all, it's really high cost, but also the deliverability of 11 new build over 30 years would be very difficult for Auckland Council. So both in terms of the practicality and the cost, we do not recommend option 4, which is all needs met. So option 2 and 3 just go some ways in meeting the needs of Aucklanders for aquatic services, with option 3 having a broader coverage, but also taking into account the cost, the impact on development contribution and ratepayers. So it's it's a balancing act actually, and looking at what type of level of investment this council is comfortable with.
And are we definitely restricted to the 30 years? You couldn't put option 4 out to the following decade, so at least it's included and could be brought forward as if needed. I mean, I'm just concerned that if we adopt 2 and 3, that those projects under option 4, which will be needed at some point, are just gone.
I think philosophically it's a question as to whether you want to meet all needs or not, or whether you just expect to meet some of the needs, and that will do. That's a good question.
Okay.
Just to add to that, we've put 4 options in there for completeness so that you can see the comparison between them. As Corolla said, taking a network view has tried to balance what future growth will be and needs against the fiscal constraints that council always has to balance. Obviously, a 30-year view, yes, we could go further, but this does focus on a 30-year view as being, that's realistic in terms of information. Obviously, over those 30 years, as things progress, that will continue to be tested as well too, to see, how viable the eventual options are. But it does take that regional network view. Obviously, we can't provide everything everywhere, so it is a matter of looking at some of those trade-offs as well.
Okay, I've got a couple other questions, but my preference would be in the business case if there was, even if it was in an appendix, to show what else there's potential. So in the recommendation in front of us here under D1, it talks about improvements to existing facilities, but that comes under only those that are considered under options 2 and 3. So what happens if there are opportunities for improvements through partnerships to other facilities not listed under 2 and 3? Those will be excluded as worded there. So what's the process?
So two things is that when we speak about partnership for council pools, we're speaking mostly about a third party building and owning a facility and us leasing it back. This is not a model that's possible for a pool extension. You know, the ownership is of a facility, not of a part of a facility. So the possibility of a partnership for an extension doesn't exist, right? So we're speaking about delivering differently here when we speak about improvement of existing facilities, whether we can align with the delivering differently program. But for the partnership, it's partnership for new build. And the partnership in itself is not a free facility. There's still a cost to council. So when we look at prioritized investment pipeline, we're looking at where the gaps are the most acute, the response that's most appropriate to fill that gap. So that's still a priority list. If an opportunity occur outside that priority list, it would need to be assessed really thoroughly because a lease, the third party expects a return on investment, so it's not a free facility. So there's still a cost to council.
Okay, then the added bit in red there might need to be reconsidered. My last question is that the majority of the current leisure centres and aquatics were built under legacy councils, sort of funded locally. So the equivalent today would be like a sub-regional targeted rate to fund them. Is that something that you're looking at rather than, and that might be an easier way to get things moving in areas if the local community is funding them and gets behind it?
Yes, that's correct. So that's in the next step of work. We would look at different funding tools, and targeted rate is one of those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I guess, you know, I talked about option 4 in the pre-agenda. I mean, it's almost $2 billion. So we kind of have to be, I guess we're trying to be realistic to get good advice on a $1 billion plan. That will probably be difficult to fund. So, you know, we have to be, the option 2 and 3 figure is extremely high. So we just have to think about what we're actually going to get back that we can put into a long-term plan process at this stage. But I understand that we want all the advice too. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks. Some of my questions have been answered, including the one that Councillor Gillens just asked. But I'll start with, the business case notes that renewals are severely underfunded. What's your advice? I mean, should not we be prioritising that, which we have already, before looking at more? Or is that part of the work that you're going to do as well?
So we will provide more advice on the actual renewal or critical renewal envelope for aquatic centres as part of the LTP. The tension between spending all your money onto renewals versus all your money in growth is that obviously there's the have and have not communities. And as Auckland grows and grows outwards or needs more facilities in urban areas, by favouring renewals only, you're not delivering for other type of communities. So I think it needs to be a balanced funding envelope, a bit for renewal and a bit for new growth. But also thinking about how we fund might just be helping with that conundrum, you know, having like a funding plan for, and maybe a new funding tool for aquatics could just help.
Thank you. And just, I think, sort of, Councillor Gillen started my question because obviously, you know, we all want a lot of stuff, but we've got to pay for it, right? And how does that happen? So my question is, what share of each option is funded by DCs? development contribution versus rates? And what would option 3 mean for rates over the LTP?
Sorry, I'm just looking at the report.
Sure.
In table 2, after paragraph 49, we have the development contribution percentage of the total cost. And you can see it varies, it moves from 44% for option 1, 60% for option 2, 56% for option 3, and 55% for option 4. So basically around half or a bit more of the total capex envelope can be funded through development contribution, and the rest would fall on rates. We haven't calculated yet the impact on rates, and that's kind of what we want to advise on in the next stage of work.
Okay, so you've done the DC work, but you haven't done the rates work. And just on the funding by additional borrowing, because I've got your chart, I've seen it. Have you looked at that in conjunction with the additional borrowing that we're going to need kind of for other things? Are you happy, are you convinced that the additional borrowing is within our funding envelope for borrowing with some extra headroom for other projects? I mean, the borrowing, they're funded by additional borrowing is, option 2 is 253 million and option 3 is 453 million. I mean, that's a lot. So I just want to make sure you've done that math with our finance team year on year to make sure that it works within our borrowing envelope.
So this is, so the finance team has done all the work on our modelling. So, all the work that you see to date has been done by the finance team. So I think the next stage of the equation is pulling everything together as a whole financial policy and see how that fits.
And I suppose, Deputy Mayor, this is the point of doing the next stage of work so that we can have that additional information for you, and as it goes into the LTP process, then the ability for that information to be compared and to look at the various trade-offs there as well too. Just emphasising that this report really is asking for that further work on affordability and deliverability to be done so that you have that information in front of you through the LTP process.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I've got a couple of questions. So, with regards to the population comparison, so with the option 2 and option 3, it says that we've got the catchment currently of Flatbush for 56,000 people. The Howick ward in total is 154,000 people. The current aquatic pool was built in 1987. And by the time that the potential Flatbush is built, the current aquatic centre will be 47 years old. So the report, talks about the growing rate of 34% by 2052. So with Drury and Northwest being future demand and the Flatbush being existing unmet demand, what does it look like with that 34% growth by 2052 that we're building actually facilities large enough for growth, not chasing our tails for unmet demand? That's my first question.
All right, so the east of Auckland catchment is one of the catchments with the largest gap in provision, and there are a few responses there. So you mentioned the Flatbush Aquatic Centre. We also have the Lloyd Elsmore expansion, which is in option 3, and then some other expansion in, so which one have we got for, the all-weather lagoon pool as well in the first decades. That will just go and serve some of the Howie catchments. Laudersmore, and we've got Ottawa Pool as well, which is a bit further, but also serves that catchment. So we've got one new pool and 3 redevelopments of council pool, which will help alleviate that gap for East. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second question is which parts of all the regions that you've identified have the biggest opportunity to increase through the existing pools? So, yeah.
If you look at option 3, we're proposing 11 council improvement projects, and those pools are sitting across the Isthmus, the East, and the South primarily. So that's where the opportunities exist for improvement.
One, sorry, Chair. With their community access grants, if they're successful, will that reduce the need for new aquatic centres, have you identified, or will it complement them for the future growth?
So they are part of our response. So the logic of the intervention is that we looked at the highest gaps, and then we say, what can we do? Is there a council pool that can be extended? Is there land for it? Is there a council pool that can be all-weathered? Because that delivers quite a lot of capacity and deliver good value for money. We also look at, is there an education pool we could potentially partner with? Is the pool of sufficient size? Is it located in a place? We did visual recognitions. This could be open and the public come to that pool. And then this last resort was, do we need to build a new pool? So that was the logic. And of course, with partnership with education, we will have to do quite a bit of negotiation, but there are opportunities out there. They do make some difference in terms of the capacity, but of course, they only open after hours. And so it's not the same level of water capacity as a council pool, which is open from 6 to 9 or 10. But they're relatively good value for money because we don't expend a lot of capital when the pool is provided by education.
Last question, Chair. What's the criteria that's been used to determine where the future harbour pools will be located?
So there's my understanding is that there's an internal working group which is meeting this week, I think, looking at the feasibility. So it's led by our engineering colleagues. So it's very much about what's feasible around water and the cost of the engineering and all that. But it's yet to be determined. So at the moment, the program business case just count them as a way of providing for seasonal additional water capacity, but we haven't determined where they are. That will be done at a later stage.
Thank you, that's it. And just a note that I think it's incredibly important that all our children have the ability and access to be able to learn to swim. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Brown, you have questions?
Yeah, I've got questions, and which will probably wander into a rant, but I'm overall not at all happy with what I've heard there. I think it needs to go back to basics and challenge these shibboleths about having to move. We built Brownie's Pool for bugger all last year. Who went there? Do you know? Have you examined who used it?
We have the number of visitors per day.
Where do they come from?
We don't know that.
I do. They came from Kelston and Manukau mostly, and they were a very strong representation of our supposedly challenged people. High levels of Pacifica and Maori used that. They loved it. And so when you see that, you've got to challenge a lot of the assumptions that you've made. You know, we're spending fortunes here because people might have to drive. They drive. You know, we're just spending fortunes having public transport so they can get around. And then in here, it says here, we're going to have 4 pools at over $100 million each. That's an unbelievable sum. You know, and there's no justification for it. At $16,000 a square metre, that's.
Did you have some questions? I'm
Yeah,
happy for you to
yeah.
speak
Where
later.
do they get this stuff from? Why did they do this? Why haven't you challenged it right from the start? Where is the information about seasonal use? Where does it prove that people are going to do that? So if you haven't found out who's using what we've got at the moment, how can we accept any of this? And then you said...
Hang on, wait, do you want to answer seasonal use? I know you...
So we have very good information from Intercept survey about who use our facilities. We've done surveys across 19 council pools with the Karanga Plaza pool. It's a new pool. We haven't done any Intercept survey. We know there's been about 265 visitors per day across the summer.
Okay, so where's the seasonal use information here?
I think I'll pass on to Gas. He's got some good statistics about. There's a lot of information sitting in the network review about statistics, about users, about conditions. Not everything is in this report, but Gas can speak about seasonal visits to our own council network.
If you just want to bring your mics a bit closer to you too. So
Sure. Okay, so seasonal use across the network, we've got 28 facilities, including 1 harbour pool, 6 other summer-only outdoor pools, 14 completely indoor facilities, and 5 that have indoor-outdoor pools. And that's about 3.5 million visits a year. Over the summer period, which is December through to March, we have about 40% of our visitors are in that area, and the visits to our outdoor spaces versus our indoor spaces is we see about 10% of our annual visitation to our outdoor pools, so about 350,000 visits to the outdoor spaces. So that's the best one, or the biggest ones, Parnell Bars. We get about 100,000 annual visits to Parnell Bars, 50 to Point Erin, Moananui Kiwa, all those great pools that we have outside at Moananui Kiwa, they get about 40-odd thousand visits over the summer. And then we tracked 16,000 visits at Karanga Plaza this summer, but that's while we had staff there. So I think there's probably closer to 25,000 people came to play at Karanga Plaza this summer, which is around about, this sort of fits in between Jubilee Pool and PCP in the south, which have around about the same sort. So our summer pools are really, really popular. It's fantastic. I think harbour pools are going to play a really important role in the overall network capacity that we have, but they do still challenge us across the whole of the year. For example, you know, Tepid Baths is probably going to have around 300 visits today, and Karanga Plaza is probably going to have maybe 1 or 2 hardy souls. But there are ways that we can encourage year-round swimming at some of these outdoor facilities as well. But that would be part of it. That's going to form part of the our direction going forward, is how can we encourage a longer summer season, or to use some of these facilities, or repurpose some of these facilities at real value for money.
Well, that value for money is spoken about there, but we don't have costs per visit, because if it costs less and a whole lot of people go there, then the cost per visit might be down, so we don't know comparison. And we've accepted over $100 million for a pool, and I don't see any justification for that. I don't know how you came up with that figure. But $16,000 a square metre, is a high quality hotel. And so I don't get how you get to those numbers.
Can I just add something there? The $100,000 for an aquatic facility is for the cost of the entire facility. So that most of those facility scopes are 2 indoor courts as well as aquatic. So it's both an aquatic and leisure centre. I think the aquatic portion of it wouldn't be the. I'm not arguing that they're not obviously more expensive.
Well, it
than
doesn't say that here, mate. It says $406 million for the aquatic section. And if you're building an aquatic section and the scope creeps up to have every other sport going there, it's going to cost a lot more, and it's eating into something else. I mean, we've got intense pressure on keeping the costs down at the council here. We've got a lot of councillors who perhaps want a whole lot of things, but we've got to pay for them. And so I need to be convinced. Why is there a much bigger focus on using the education facilities?
So in option 2, there's 8 partnerships with education, and option 3, there's 9. There's a number of schools that have got no pools, and not every school pool is suitable for a partnership opportunity. That has proved very hard also in the last few years. We've tried to achieve partnership. It's not as easy as it sounds. So in discussion with the delivering differently team, we felt that was an appropriate number to aim for. If we were to be more successful, there could be more in the future, but that's what we're proposing at this stage of the program.
Well, why isn't it an option 1? I mean, this should be something you're just doing as of right, is getting as much use of publicly funded. The same people pay for schools as pay for rates, as tax, and so there should be a total focus on utilising as much as we can of what's there. And if you go from option 1 to option 2, you add on 8. If I've got it somewhere in here, 8 new ones with education, which shouldn't cost a lot. A whole lot of cheap ones, like Brownie's Pool, which won't cost a lot. And somehow they've got $16.5 million worth of borrowing. So that doesn't add up to me. So, can you? The next thing, I suppose, is how do you actually address or convince us that proximity is the value to warrant another $100 million? We've just spent several $1 billion on improving public transport, but we have to have a pool immediately next door, and people drive to the beach. That's why we have parking there. So, can you justify? How are you going to justify $100 million each one? That's what I want to really get. And if you're going to say aquatic, you can't just add all those other things in, because this says aquatic here. It doesn't say padel and.
So if you look in the report after paragraph 51, we have provided some explanation as to how we came with that figure and made some comparison for cost of pools. It also says that the 4 pools that are in the pipeline, which 3 of them have had indicative business cases done for and adopted by the governing body, all of those pools include 2 outdoor courts. So the $16,000 per meter square could be further tested with the market. Obviously, we haven't delivered a pool for quite some time, so it's hard to benchmark against other pools we've delivered. But when we look at the cost of community facilities that we have delivered in Auckland, that's the cost we came up with. It's slightly cheaper if you include outdoor courts, because obviously those are cheaper to deliver per meter square, so that's combined cost per meter square is lower. We've taken some precedent. We looked at Tauranga, we looked at Albany, and Thames Coromandel, and we looked, we think that's about right for a program level costing, which is to be further tested. So there could be opportunities to bring the cost down. As I mentioned in my presentation, we're looking at standardized design. So could that bring the cost down? I think one thing that brings the cost up quite a lot is scope creep. When we want, more through the planning design, there's more being asked of a facility. So just keeping that under wrap.
Why don't you just say, work out for us how much is sensible to spend in each case and show us what you get? Because we tend to do, at $100 million, you'll have architects and it'll be specifically designed, it'll look, we should standardise. Every school pool in the country when they used to learn how to swim there was exactly the same. And we've just learnt the costs of individual design and scope creep from the city railing going completely out of control cost-wise. So instead of, if we said 4 new builds, I'd like to say before you do anything else, show me what a new build at 20 million looks like, what's a new build at 50 million looks like, and what's a new build at 100 million look like. And is a $20 million one might be just what people like. And if you're going to have it, with things that are essentially so subsidised that they're free, not surprising people use them, but would they be prepared to pay for them if the real costs were exposed? And so I want to see some, I've got on this page here which has got the options. There's no dollars with any of those other than the grand thing. And I worked out that 8 access grants, 4 harbour pools, which only cost about $200,000 or $300,000 each. 8 access grants that can't cost more than $100,000 each, surely. And 3 council improvements, and that comes to $16.5 million. So there's a lot of money going somewhere. And what does an improvement mean? And so there has to be some financial discipline here.
That is what approving, if we approve this today, because we've already approved option 1 technically to go forward.
Not necessarily, we haven't. It's in the long-term plan, which we haven't done again, and it wasn't particularly clear to me that we were spending $100 million on each one.
Mr Mayor, just to clarify, we do need to do further work, particularly on affordability. It's really helpful to have your comments. The issue around standardised design and how we can build and have that provision of pools at the most cost-effective means is something that we're acutely aware of, and we do need to do further work on that. Today is really saying, can we narrow those options so that we can look at those groups of packages and come back to you with further detailed analysis around affordability. And that information can then be available for you to consider as part of the long-term plan process.
Well, I found it very hard to find that information in some ways. Here there's pages and pages of platitudes, but not a lot of dollars. And so you'll be getting that. How many privately owned pools are there in Auckland?
For residents or for?
Yeah, residents, privately owned pools. And how many of them are covered?
Backyard pools. I don't know that.
Well, you should know that because that's what you are asked to do. To understand the demand, understand the place, which areas have lots of privately owned pools. And if people are going to spend 100 or 200 or 300,000 their own in a pool, then they seem to be happy to have it not covered. Why would we bother?
So in terms of looking at future growth and where are the gaps, our work, we have also looked at the Sport New Zealand analysis of future growth as well too, and where some of those gaps are. Private pools and community pools do have different uses, so it's also looking at the different types of uses that are needed as well too. So particularly lane swimming, as well as leisure use. And of course, there's all the different sporting codes that do utilise our community pools as well.
Okay, well, can we have a lot of that information at the start of the next time it comes back so we can see some perspective on this? Because when you say gaps, that's just a gap on a map. It doesn't assume that people don't ever move. People are prepared to move quite a long way to go and buy their goods. And you're telling me that they're not prepared to use the billions of dollars of public transport just to go and have a bloody swim. I find that very hard to believe, actually. And I mean, a gentleman who's just arrived here lives out towards Piha.
So we have data, if you're interested, on how far people travel to go to pools. So we know that I think it's 70% of people travel about 6 kilometers to go to a facility.
So if we were looking at having a closer relationship with the education department, it may well be that if we put some money into perhaps covering a school pool or doing something like that, it's probably a better bet. If we perhaps had, I mean, I know of major schools that have the public open it after 4 and over the weekend, and the school on the other hours, and it works out pretty well. And so when do people go? Because if you're going to take your kids to the pool, it'll be after school anyhow. So there's just not enough here to be spending billions of dollars. I mean, we easily get to the billions here very quickly. And billions of dollars are not, decisions are not made on kind of stories. It has to be much, much more understandable. We have to have a debate which starts with what is there, and not just asking people who've gone there, did they like it or something or other, because everyone likes free stuff. Okay, I think I've quizzed you enough to get the message across. I will be voting against A, B and C. Okay.
Thank you. I think on the outdoor pools, last time I asked, it was about 5% of all Auckland residential households have a pool, about 5%, and most of them are actually in areas where there's a lot of public pools already. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I've got a number of cues and reserve my right to speak as well. But can I just check, so is Northwest classified as future demand while Flatbush is identified as current demand? Is that accurate?
So there is both pent-up demand and growth driving both Flatbush and Northwest.
Sorry about that. I didn't quite catch that.
So the demand for Flatbush and for Northwest are both pent-up demand, so a gap in service and also
Hang on a
new
second,
growth.
Mia.
So that's why
hang on a
there's
second,
an
Carol.
element of development
Carol,
contribution.
sorry. I cannot concentrate, Mia. If you want to talk, can you just step away from the table? We're trying to answer questions. Yeah, but it's really hard for councillors to ask questions while people are constantly talking over them. So sorry, Councillor Henderson, I'm trying to listen.
Yeah, no, sorry, and yeah, forgive me for being insistent. It's just this is a document to guide future policy and staff work. So I just want to make super clear that there isn't a differentiation between Flatbush and Northwest.
Both of them have got level of service deficit and new growth driving the need for new pool. And so that's why there's a development contribution element to both facilities.
Thank you, that's fantastic. Just in terms of, we've talked a little bit about attendances to pools. Do we also record wait times for people outside trying to get into pools?
We don't have data on it, we have it anecdotally.
Okay, that's cool, no problem. So just in the report, sorry, I did have the page, but I've lost it. But it says in the report, Northwest funding of 15.1 million allocated for land acquisition by 2032. Yet the LTP has 14.8 million, so we've got the 300 for detailed business case, from FY30. So is it FY30 or is it FY32?
I would have to check that.
I just don't want to pass this report saying actually you've got to wait 2 more years than you're going to. So that's actually quite an important point.
So the proposal on the option 2 is that Northwest would be delivered in the next 10 years of the LTP.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, FY30, I believe. Yeah, cool, thank you. Well, I mean, we're going through it again next year anyway, but I just wanted to make sure that's really, really important to point out. Finally, generally, are we set up as an organisation to partner with other parties to deliver pools?
We are gearing up to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I ask that because in West Auckland we've got a large body of history around delivering our facilities with community groups and philanthropic donations as well as council. And in this situation in particular, I understand that will be on the table, but also business potentially could be really interested in contributing. So is this something that we could be doing?
Potentially. So as part of the program business case, we did some market testing. We did some interviews with different groups to understand the level of interest in partnering with council and delivering facilities differently. So there is an interest, not so much from the philanthropist sector, but definitely from the development sector about partnering with Auckland Council and seeing as a secure partner.
Can I add to that? We also we've started that process, so we have working with policy and procurement on at the end of the month we have a expression of interest seminar, or sort of a session. We're inviting people who want to partner with us in these key development opportunities to see who's interested in those things and how we might better work with them.
Thank you. And yeah, I really appreciate your work and thanks for your involvement in this process as well. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor. Councillor Newman, online.